HOA Karen kept blocking my driveway like it was her birthright, and my concrete slab was a public altar where she could park her beige chariot and receive blessings from the sun. The first time, I chalked it up to a misunderstanding. The second time, I called the non-emergency line and learned the phrase civil matter. By the fifth time, I started timing her like a sprinter. Personal best, 3 hours and 19 infuriating minutes. If spite were a sport, she'd have qualified for nationals. I'm Max, graphic designer by day, part-time night owl by contract, and full-time owner of a narrow driveway that feeds a single-car garage like a concrete straw. My house sits on a corner in the Willow Ridge HOA, where lawn heights are regulated like blood pressure and mailboxes must be eggshell, white, not to be confused with bone or winter cloud, for which there are fines. My driveway is my lifeline. I start early, and I sometimes get client calls late, which means I need in and out. Karen, officially Marsha Withers, HOA board secretary, clipboard enthusiast, owner of a 2011 beige sedan with a live, laugh, lease compliance decal, has decided my curb is community property. The community, in this case, is her. Monday, 7:38 a.m., she planted that sedan across my apron at a diagonal, like a cork in a bottle. I had a meeting downtown at 9 and a printer whose idea of loyalty was sometimes. I stood on my porch with my travel mug, watching the sunlight wash over her car's fading clear coat while the engine clicked itself cool. The keys weren't in it, and the driver, Our Lady of Perpetual Entitlement, was nowhere. I called her, straight to voicemail. I texted, "You're blocking my driveway again." 3 dots appeared, then vanished, like a ghost changing its mind. At 7:52, she materialized, tote bag, sunglasses, visor, and a smile that could sandwood. "Oh, Max," she trilled, as if my name were an unexpected appetizer. "Is that your driveway?" "The curb is common area. The part that prevents me from leaving my house belongs to me," I said. "Also, city code. Driveway aprons must be clear." She cocked her head. "The city works with the HOA. That's not how government works," I said. She dragged her smile another inch. "We have a board meeting tonight. We'll discuss clarifying signage. In the meantime, patience is a virtue." She patted my mailbox like it was a dog and got in her car with the ceremony of a monarch boarding a carriage. When she finally reversed, she left her front while kissing the edge of my apron. Just enough to be petty, not enough to be towable. That was her signature, calibrated inconvenience. By lunch, a lime green sticky note clung to my door. "Please refrain from using the driveway for excessive ingress or egress. Creates noise. M. Withers, section." I held the note like it might bite. "Excessive ingress or egress. That's movement, Karen. That's literally what a driveway is for." I stuck it to the fridge beside a magnet shaped like a middle finger. The week unraveled like a spool in cat paws. Tuesday, a courtesy notice from the HOA citing my trash cans being visible for 8 minutes past the approved window. Photographic evidence included, time-stamped by a camera angle suspiciously similar to Karen's front stoop. Wednesday, a pair of orange cones appeared on the curb outside my driveway, with a laminated card, "Temporary Community Fire Access Lane." I Googled it, nothing. I called the fire department. They laughed, told me there's no such thing, and asked me to email a photo. I did. The cones vanished by evening, replaced by Karen's beige sedan, again straddling the apron like a bored cat. I started gathering my own evidence. Every block, every note, every invented rule. Phone photos, timestamps, audio memos, because sometimes you can't believe your own memory when absurdity turns daily. I also started talking to neighbors. Quietly at first, passing chats while hauling groceries. "Hey, does Karen ever?" I'd start. "Oh, the curb thing," Mrs. Alvarez said, lowering her voice like we were discussing embargoed secrets. "She says it's guest overflow. My son got 3 fines last month because his basketball hoop projected an athletic aura." "An athletic aura," I repeated. "Should we call a priest?" "She is the priest," Mrs. Alvarez said. "And the confessional. And the executioner." Thursday night, Karen gave me a smile that said she'd just sharpened a new rule with her teeth. Max, friendly reminder, she said, stepping onto my property without asking. Your garage door remained open for 6 minutes while you were unloading. Our guidelines suggest 2 minutes as the spirit of the rule. Ah, yes, the spirit, I said. Is the spirit legally binding, or is it more of a haunted suggestion? She leaned in. I know good people downtown. They respect our community standards. Translation, she once shook the mayor's hand at a ribbon cutting. And we have a towing company on retainer now. For driveway violations. You're towing me from my own driveway? I asked. If the board deems the usage improper, she said, savoring deems like a luxury chocolate. We'll vote on it Monday. She left without waiting for a reply, her visor gleaming like a tiny shield. I watched her cross my grass, and that's when I noticed. She'd placed 2 fresh, no parking, fire lane stickers on the curb, identical font to the HOA newsletter. The curb isn't a fire lane. It's my curb. The little adhesive squares winked at me like taunts. By Friday, I'd compiled a neat digital folder, blocks_01 to blocks_17. Evidence lined up like soldiers. Patterns emerging. Her car whenever the city patrol's route changed. Her notes whenever the board met. The sudden fire lane signs after a complaint. It wasn't random. It was strategy. Cheap, smug strategy. The kind that relies on people giving up because it's easier. I don't do give up. I do diagrams in the margins and post-it constellations. I do quiet. I do patient. People think the loudest person is the dangerous one. They never look twice at the guy who just smiles and says, okay. I smiled a lot that weekend. Sunday evening, as cicadas tuned up and sprinklers hissed along the street, Karen parked across my apron again. Full diagonal, hazard lights on, the automotive equivalent of spreading elbows across 2 armrests. She got out with her clipboard, which she held like a scepter. Emergency, she said. Board business. What's the emergency? I asked. Your lawn edging, she said. It's inconsistent. And certain members have expressed concerns about your nighttime comings and goings. Certain members meaning you, I said. She smiled. We'll vote Monday. Perhaps earlier. She tapped her pen on the hood of her car, a soft metronome of smugness. Then she left her sedan right there and walked off. Not to a house. Just off. Like a magician exiting before the trick lands. I stood at the edge of my own driveway, mug in one hand, phone in the other, heartbeat pacing with the sprinkler spray. Something clicked into place, not angry, not panicked. Precise. The part of me that solves client puzzles with 3 fonts and a negative space reveal just rotated the problem. There are a lot of ways to move a car without touching it. Most of them are legal. Some of them are art. I took a slow sip. Board business, I said to the beige sedan. Great. So is mine. When the meeting notice went out the next morning, with an agenda item that should never have been on there, and a time change designed to catch people at work, I responded right away. See you there, I wrote. I'll bring exhibits. And for the first time in a week, I wasn't late. I wasn't blocked. Because that afternoon, while Karen was busy stapling power to a bulletin board, something very simple and very official happened on our street. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, nothing you could call vandalism or vengeance. Just a shift. A quiet mechanism turning. The kind of thing that makes a beige sedan stop being a problem and start being an object lesson. But that's getting ahead of myself. Monday, 6:58 p.m., the HOA meeting began, and the room smelled like folding chairs and lemon cleaner. Karen took the head seat, visor on, clipboard ready. And I took mine, a folder labeled exhibits in my lap, and an entirely different plan labeled only in my head, disappearance. The Willow Ridge Clubhouse had that neutral beige that makes time feel optional. Karen sat at the center like a solar eclipse with a visor. To her right was Todd, president, jawline, polo shirt. To her left Nancy, treasurer, calculator as personality. And beyond them a handful of residents pretending eye contact could make the agenda shorter. I took a metal chair that knew more about human suffering than most philosophers and opened my folder. Karen banged a gavel small enough to be a toy. I call this meeting to order. First item. Improper driveway utilization at 1147 Willow. Oh, me, first course. She read from her clipboard with the devotional warmth of a hymn. Excessive ingress or egress, nighttime disturbances, unsanctioned curb usage. I raised my hand. For the minutes, the curb in front of my driveway is not unsanctioned. It's the literal, legal access point to my garage. Also, I have exhibits. Todd did the diplomatic throat clear. We'll hear from the resident after board remarks. Karen perched her reading glasses on the end of her nose like she was about to diagnose my soul. We have recurring complaints. Submitted by? I asked. She smiled at the room. Various. In Karen, various is Latin for me. I set the first sheet on the table. Exhibit A, photos of Ms. Withers' vehicle blocking my driveway, apron on 5 separate days this week. Exhibit B, voicemail from fire prevention confirming there is no temporary community fire access lane program. Exhibit C, City Code 12.44.220, blocking a driveway is towable without warning. Nancy frowned at the code page. Where'd you get this? From the city, I said. They're really good at making laws available. It's a hobby of theirs. A few neighbors shifted. Mrs. Alvarez lifted a finger like a shy resurrection. My son got fined for an athletic aura, she said. Also not in the bylaws. Todd sighed in the way men sigh when they realize the easy evening is going to involve thinking. Let's slow down. Ms. Withers. Karen's smile didn't move, but you could hear the teeth grinding underneath. This resident has been uncivil, she said, and there have been noises at odd hours. The board can designate the curb common property to manage standards. City trumps HOA, I said, and designating my driveway as common is like designating my lungs as a smoking area. Point of order, she said, tapping the gavel at my mouth like she could turn my volume down. We'll take this under advisement. I move we table improper utilization and instead remind residents not to block driveways, Todd said, surprising himself with bravery. Karen's jaw did a microspasm. Second, silence. Nancy stared at her calculator like it might calculate a spine. Todd coughed. Motion fails for lack of second. Fine. We'll continue. I slid one last page across. A printed email from the city parking enforcement supervisor, Len Sue. It read, in bureaucratic poetry, that their patrol had been redirected through our block and that blocking a driveway would result in citation and tow. I didn't quote it. I just let the heading breathe. Is that current? Todd asked. As of 2 hours ago, I said. They're very responsive when you send them photos, video, and a one-page timeline with bullet points, which I did. Exhibit D. Karen took in a breath that smelled like burned toast and future vengeance. This board maintains authority over common areas, and the city maintains authority over the street, I said. We can play jurisdiction bingo all night, or we can stop parking across people's homes. Murmurs. A couple nods. One guy in a CrossFit hoodie said, yeah, my contractor got ticketed last week for parking on a corner. City's serious. Karen pivoted, queenly. New business, she chirped. Proposal to adopt a 2-minute garage door closure standard. Even Todd chuckled. Is that enforceable? Karen's eyes said she could enforce gravity if given a clipboard big enough. We'll draft language. They moved on. Budgets. Mulch. A decorative boulder dispute I didn't know existed but instantly cared about. I waited, calm on the surface, while the plan in my head hummed. Disappearance is mostly logistics with a cape on. No crowbars. No sugar in the gas tank. Just paperwork wearing a tuxedo. When the meeting adjourned, neighbors hung back. A few good lucks, a couple about time. Karen swept past me, perfume of citrus and absolutism. You've made this adversarial, she said quietly. Blocking my house made it adversarial, I said. I'm just labeling the axes. She gave a cryptic smile that said, I have another move. Of course she did. They always do. I went home and started lining up mine. First, I filed a 311 service request for illegal signage affixed to public curb, those counterfeit fire lane stickers. The city likes when you tattle on lies. It flatters their monopoly on truth. Second, I emailed parking enforcement with a little matrix, dates, times, car descriptions, plate numbers, and outcomes. I didn't ask for special favors. I asked for routing. Government is a vending machine. You just have to know which letter gets the Snickers. Third, I called the urban forestry office. Our block has 2 London plane trees with roots that lift sidewalk panels like gently flexing biceps. When the city prunes, they post bright orange, no parking, tow away for tree work, notices 48 hours in advance, and mean it. The dispatcher, a woman with the voice of a patient aunt, said crews were planning a sweep next month. Any chance we can move Willow Ridge up? I asked. Low branches overhanging driveways. Possible obstruction to emergency access. Not a lie. The limbs did a little swoop over my driveway like a decorative mustache. She typed, "We have a contractor finishing a zone nearby. If they're still in the area, maybe. I'll put in a note." "Bless you, Aunt Dispatcher," I said. Fourth, I started making friends in small ways. A cold bottle of water for the mail carrier. "They fine me for walking across lawns," she said, and I believed her. A quick chat with the waste management driver, Greg, whose truck could blot out the sun and who hates cones with laminated lies. A polite call to the fire marshal, Captain Ruiz, who confirmed, with audible amusement, that any fake fire lane markings would be removed and that blocking a driveway during an emergency response was unwise. "Take photos," he said. "Send to the city and to us. Paper trails make people behave." "Same," I said. By Thursday morning, tiny orange flags sprouted along the sidewalk like crocuses announcing spring. "Utility locate," Mrs. Alvarez said, peering at one. "Are we getting new lines?" "Maybe," I said. We were not. But the city loves to locate before tree work. Liability is their love language. That afternoon, a pair of traffic cones appeared again in front of my apron, with an upgraded sign. This one printed in full color with a faux city logo that would have fooled a raccoon. "Temp fire access. No parking." I texted Len from parking. "Counterfeit signage is like cosplay for laws," I wrote, attaching a photo. He responded with the speed of a man who has a template. "Officer will remove signage. Issue warning." 10 minutes later, the cones were in a patrol trunk. 20 minutes later, Karen's beige sedan slid into place with the commitment of a seal onto a rock. She must have been watching from a window. She always is. I didn't call. I didn't rage. I sat on the porch, drank my coffee, and waited. At 3:11 p.m., a city bucket truck rolled into the block with a cheerful beep-beep and 2 men in neon vests who carried authority the way saints carry halos. They taped bright orange notices to the trees. "No parking. Tree pruning. Tow away. Date, tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. They stapled one to the utility pole directly in front of my driveway, the paper flapping like a flag of imminent consequences. Karen stepped out the moment they drove off. "Those are suggestions," she said, plucking at the notice like it was lint. "They're permits," I said. "The city's favorite nouns." She smirked. "We'll see." I smiled so gently it could have been mistaken for sleepiness. "We will." At 6:02 the next morning, her sedan returned to its altar, front tire nuzzling my apron. The orange notice stared at it like a disappointed teacher. I took a photo. 2, actually. Timestamps. Angles. The sky had that pink taffy stretch of an early summer morning. By 7:05, the bucket truck was back, followed by a smaller flatbed with city contractor on the door and, behind it, a tow truck as casual as a shark. The driver stepped out, checked the notice, checked the plate, and started spooling chain. I could see Karen's blinds vibrate. And then, slam. Door. Sprint. "Excuse me," she called, hair netted inside the visor, robe knotted like a military braid. "You can't tow community vehicles." The tow guy didn't bother looking at me. He showed her the permit. Streets posted. 48 hours. Tow authorized. She tried to stand in front of the sedan. He pointed at the curb. "Ma'am, I won't tow with you there. But the longer you delay, the more storage fees accumulate." The word fees hit her like a hymn. She stepped aside, indignant, recording on her phone like she was filming a nature documentary. The sedan's front wheels lifted, the tow truck hummed, and the beige chariot floated up like a reluctant angel. "Where are you taking it?" she demanded. City lot, he said. Call the number on the sign. She turned to me, eyes bright with holy wrath. This is harassment. This is grammar, I said. Cause and effect. As the tow truck disappeared around the corner, the bucket crew began trimming, branches falling in soft thumps. I sat on my steps, sipped coffee, and answered 2 emails for work. The streets smelled like sap and victory. Small, simple, official. And I wasn't done. Because the thing about disappearance is, it's not just one vanishing act. It's a series. A lesson taught in episodes. Today, the city. Next, the contract she keeps bragging about. And after that, the beige sedan wouldn't just leave my driveway. It would leave my life. For good. By mid-morning, the street felt lighter. It's amazing how much space one beige car could take up in your head until it was gone, trundling away behind a tow truck. Karen, however, filled the vacuum instantly. I spotted her on the phone by noon, pacing her lawn like a general on campaign, voice sharp enough to slice the humidity. She was calling someone, possibly city officials, possibly the United Nations, about her wrongful impoundment. I imagined her explaining that the fire lane she'd invented was perfectly legal because she'd printed it in color. Meanwhile, I got an email from Len at Parking Enforcement. Vehicle impounded at city lot. Release available upon payment of tow and storage fees. Additional fine for obstruction of permitted work. A little bureaucratic poetry to brighten my day. At 2:46 p.m., Karen stormed across my grass without knocking. She had traded her visor for oversized sunglasses, probably for intimidation, but the effect was discount spy movie. This was a setup, she declared. Tree pruning. I asked. Yeah, the city's been plotting that one for years. Those branches were a threat to national security. Her jaw clenched so hard I half expected it to shatter. You called them. I informed them, I said. About a real issue. They decided the date. She jabbed a finger at me. This neighborhood is about cooperation. We don't drag each other into city politics. Blocking my driveway isn't cooperation, I said. It's obstruction. With parking. She tilted her chin. I'm filing a harassment complaint with the board. Perfect, I said. I'll attach it to my complaint with the city. We can laminate them and hang them at the clubhouse. She left in a huff, muttering about precedent and community spirit, which was rich, considering her spirit was mostly vinegar. The next 48 hours were blissfully beige-free. The curb in front of my driveway looked almost exotic without her sedan squatting there. I actually started using my driveway without having to play real-life Tetris with my schedule. But peace is just the intermission between Karen's acts. Saturday morning, I found a new laminated notice taped to my mailbox. Notice of temporary curb easement. Pursuant to HOA guidelines, the board reserves the right to authorize parking on common easements during community events. Below that, in bold, was a line that seemed aimed directly at me. Individual driveways may be designated as community parking for the duration of approved activities. No signature, no date, just the HOA logo at the top, which was literally a stock clip art house inside a circle. I sent it to Todd, the HOA president, with the subject line, cute, but no. 5 minutes later, he replied, Max, I didn't approve this. Definitely not valid. Ignore it. So, not official, just another counterfeit decree from the curbside queen herself. That's when I decided this wasn't going to be a one-time tow. She'd bounce back, find another excuse, and plant her sedan right where it didn't belong. So I needed something more permanent. A friend of mine, Connor, works for a company that contracts private security for commercial lots. Over coffee, I floated an idea. Not sabotage. Karen was great at making herself look persecuted, so I had to be cleaner than clean. What if, I said, her car just couldn't be here anymore? Connor raised an eyebrow. Couldn't, or wasn't allowed? Both, I said. But legally. He smiled. Well, there's the restricted access program. Apparently, businesses can request that certain vehicles be added to a trespass tow list with contracted tow companies. It's meant for repeat offenders who keep parking in private lots without permission. If Karen's car somehow ended up flagged for multiple zones around here, including the HOA clubhouse lot, It would be at risk of towing any time it parked in those areas. That'd be hilarious, I said. But it's for private property, right? Mostly, Connor said. But there are overlapping agreements. If she parks in certain zones, it's fair game. All it takes is the right reports. Reports, I could do. The opportunity landed faster than I expected. Sunday afternoon, Karen hosted some kind of HOA tea and wine gathering at the clubhouse. By 2 o'clock, her sedan was parked not in her own driveway, but halfway across the clubhouse's loading area, an area clearly marked no parking, service vehicles only. I took photos. Time-stamped. Wide shot, close-up of the sign, plate visible. Emailed them to Connor with the subject, a gift. He called me an hour later. Got it. That's 2 zones already, clubhouse and one of our partner lots behind the strip mall. If she does it one more time in either, she's on the restricted list. Then I guess we just wait, I said. Monday morning, the sedan was back in front of my driveway, because of course it was. She must have reclaimed it from impound over the weekend. I didn't even bother confronting her. I just called parking enforcement again, emailed Len with the photo, and went about my day. This time, they didn't tow immediately, they ticketed instead. And here's the beautiful part. 3 tickets in 30 days? Automatic review for habitual offender status in the city system. Habitual offenders get watched. Watch cars don't last long in the wrong spot. By midweek, Karen was officially in the crosshairs of both the city and a private tow network. I didn't need to touch her car, didn't need to break a single rule. I just gave the right people the right paper at the right time. But for my plan to fully work, I had to set the stage for one last performance. One where Karen chose to park somewhere she absolutely shouldn't. I just needed bait. And bait, in Karen's case, was surprisingly easy to make. Bait for Karen had to be irresistible. It couldn't be obvious, and it couldn't be petty, at least, not visibly petty. This needed to look like an opportunity she had discovered all on her own, the kind she'd brag about while misquoting bylaws. I started with the HOA newsletter. Todd sends it out in a plain PDF every month. Deadly dull, the kind of reading that makes your coffee tired. I volunteered to help with formatting for this issue. He said yes instantly, because Todd has a kid in T-ball and was already 3 deadlines behind on everything. While I didn't touch the content, I'm not stupid enough to fabricate in print. I did take some liberties with layout. I put the upcoming neighborhood improvements section right at the top, bold, with one bullet in particular given a little extra breathing room. Temporary curbside access to the clubhouse loading zone for deliveries and event setup. It was true. There was a one-day event coming up for a local charity, and the city had approved a temporary access waiver for the loading zone, but only for vendors with a permit tag. I knew Karen wouldn't bother reading the vendor tag part. Friday afternoon, I set the rest of the stage. I borrowed 2 folding tables from Mrs. Alvarez and set them up near the clubhouse's side entrance, just enough to make it look like something was going on. I stacked some boxes, empty, but sealed with tape, and labeled them event supplies in big marker letters. Then I left, letting the scene marinate like a steak in Karen's brain. By Saturday morning, I was in my living room, coffee in hand, watching through the blinds. Sure enough, 9:12 a.m., the beige chariot cruised past my house and straight toward the clubhouse loading zone. She eased it into place with the kind of precision you only see in jewel thieves and parking offenders. No vendor tag on the dash, of course. Why would the rules apply to the HOA secretary? I gave it 15 minutes, enough for her to wander inside and start overseeing whatever she thought was happening, before I made my call. Connor answered on the first ring. Morning. Got you a triple shot of beige, I said. Clubhouse loading zone, no tag. Perfect. Our guy's on the road already. Make sure it's subtle, I said. I don't want her blaming the city this time. He chuckled. It'll be like it vanished. From my porch, I could see the tow truck arrive. No flashy lights, no big beeping, just a quiet roll-up and a driver who looked like he'd been doing this since cars were invented. He backed up, hooked the sedan in one clean motion, and was halfway down the block before Karen even came outside. The timing was chef's kiss. She emerged holding a clipboard, mouth open mid-sentence, only to stop dead when she saw the empty curb. Her head did a full swivel, like maybe it had rolled away by itself. Then she spotted me across the street. "You," she yelled, pointing like we were in a low-budget courtroom drama. "Me?" I said, putting on my best confused but approachable face. "I'm just enjoying the morning. They stole my car." "No, I'm pretty sure they towed it," I said. "Private property rules. Vendor tags only." She glared so hard I thought the visor might combust. "This is harassment." "It's actually logistics," I said. "Amazing what happens when you park where you shouldn't." By that afternoon, the beige sedan was sitting in a private impound lot that charged by the hour. She had to Uber there, which I imagine was an adventure in itself. Karen isn't exactly a rideshare type. When she got it back, I noticed something different. The car had a bright orange sticker slapped across the driver's window. "Restricted vehicle, trespass tow list." Oh yes, Connor had delivered. Now she was in a bind. Anywhere under contract with that tow network was a danger zone. The clubhouse, the strip mall with the coffee shop she liked to hold meetings in, even the HOA's own little community park. If she parked in any of those places without explicit permission, she'd lose her car faster than you could say curb easement. I figured that would be enough. That she'd take the hint, stop blocking my driveway, and slink back into her beige kingdom. But Karen doesn't do surrender. 2 days later, she was back in front of my driveway. Not full diagonal this time, just close enough that getting in and out required a 3-point turn and the patience of a saint. And that was it. That was the moment I decided her car wasn't just going to disappear temporarily. It was going to disappear for good. See, there's one thing about Karen's sedan. It's old enough that it's worth less than the fees she'd rack up if it ever went unclaimed and impound for long enough. All I had to do was make sure it kept landing there and staying there. And thanks to my new friends in parking enforcement and the tow network, I knew exactly how to make that happen. The trick wasn't getting Karen's car towed. That was already a twice-weekly sport at this point. The trick was keeping it towed long enough for the fees to pile higher than its blue book value. Once the balance tipped, the car would stop being Karen's property and start being the tow yard's headache. I didn't need to break any laws. I just had to let Karen be Karen and keep the right people informed when she was. The following Friday was my opportunity. The city was holding a Clean Streets Day, which meant sanitation trucks, street sweepers, and, my favorite part, temporary no parking zones for half the block. Bright yellow signs had been posted for 72 hours. Everyone on the street knew about it. Everyone, that is, except Karen, who absolutely knew but would never admit it. At 6:55 a.m., I heard the familiar rumble of her beige sedan. She slid it into a glowing yellow, no parking, tow-away zone right in front of the storm drain. The sign flapped in the breeze, basically begging someone to call it in. I didn't even have to. The street sweeper came by at 7:10, paused, and radioed the violation. By 7:25, the tow truck was there. Karen was nowhere in sight, probably inside writing a complaint email about someone else's recycling bin. The sedan vanished down the street for the third time in as many weeks. By now, Connor's network had her car flagged so aggressively that it was basically allergic to parking anywhere outside her driveway. 2 days later, she made the fatal mistake of attending a planning brunch at the strip mall cafe without checking her surroundings. When she came out, latte in hand, 2 neighbors in tow, the beige sedan was gone. Again, her scream could have powered a small hydroelectric dam. Here's where the magic of compounding fees comes in. Tow number 1, city lot $230 tow fee plus $55 per day storage equals 2 days, $340. Tow number 2, private lot $185 tow fee plus $65 per day storage equals 3 days, $380. Tow number 3, city lot $230 plus $55 per day equals 4 days, $450. Tow number 4, private lot $185 plus $65 per day equals 7 days, $640. By the 4th round, Karen had dropped over $1,800 into rescuing her car. And then came tow number 5, back to the city lot, where the fees really stack. When I heard from Lynn that she hadn't even called to reclaim it after 5 days, I knew it was over. She'd hit the wall where the math stopped working in her favor. 2 weeks later, the beige chariot officially changed hands. The city auctioned it off for the princely sum of $375 to a mechanic who wanted a project. Karen was now carless. I half expected her to show up at my door, clipboard in hand, ready to declare war with a pen and a list of grievances. Instead, she kept her distance. Maybe because walking to the HOA meetings didn't carry the same queenly weight as arriving in a motorized throne. Maybe because she finally realized she was under more eyes than just mine. The first HOA meeting after the Great Vanish was quiet. No driveway utilization on the agenda. No passive-aggressive sticky notes. Karen sat 2 rows back, visor still on, lips pressed in a thin line. She didn't make a single motion. Didn't even mention the curb. Todd gave me a quick nod halfway through the meeting. No words. Just that small acknowledgement between 2 people who knew exactly how much drama had just evaporated. I never told anyone the whole plan. Not Connor, not Len, not even Mrs. Alvarez. The beauty of it was that I didn't have to engineer every step. Karen's own habits did most of the work for me. All I did was make sure every wrong move landed her sedan exactly where it didn't belong. The rest was just patience, paperwork, and a little creative staging. Now, when I pull into my driveway, it's blissfully clear. The curb looks wider somehow. The air feels lighter. And every time I pass the spot where that beige sedan used to loom, I can't help but smile. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't even look like revenge. Sometimes it's just making sure the problem parks itself right out of your life and never comes back. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.